Xtalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The Xtalks Life Science podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm delighted to introduce a special guest on our show, as always. We have with us today Dr. Mario Marcondes, who is the VP, Head of Clinical Development at Nektar Therapeutics, which is a company focused on the discovery and development of novel therapies in the autoimmune and oncology spaces. Dr. Marcondes is a licensed and trained physician who specializes in oncology and immune oncology. He has more than 15 years of research and teaching experience in bone marrow transplant and cellular therapies, as well as more than 10 years of industry experience. Dr. Marcondes was the program lead for early-stage assets at Nektar, and he manages clinical trial programs from phase 1 through to phase 3. Dr. Marcondes is a member of multiple professional clinical and translational research organizations, including the American Society of Clinical Oncology, or ASCO, the American Society of Hematology, ASH, American Association for Cancer Research, AACR, and the Center for International Blood and Marrow Transplant Research, or CIBMTR, to discuss the landscape of research in oncology and autoimmune conditions and the work that Dr. Marcondes is leading at Nektar. Let's turn to him now. Dr. Marcondes, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, and it's a beautiful day here in the Bay Area where Nektar Therapeutics is located, where I built my career as well. I have a preference for the West Coast because of this beautiful sunset here, I'm happy to be here with you guys today.
Thank you so much. And dare I say, we kind of envy you here from Toronto, Canada, with the polar vortex that we're going to experience this week here. So happy to have you here, Dr. Marcondes, and really looking forward to learning more about the work that you're leading there in the Bay Area at Nektar. And so I'd like to start off by asking you about actually taking a step back to really learn a bit more about your journey in medicine and clinical development, including how you've really transitioned between academia and industry. So we'd love to hear more about that. And then what led you to join Nektar Therapeutics?
Very good. Thank you. I come from a household where both parents were on the medicine space. My father was a professor as well in gynecology, obstetrician. And obviously, he was a well-published physician, and I was always aspiring to be something along these lines. So I went down the path of medicine more so in actually doing this bench bridging kind of work where we are actually in the preclinical, but also try to push this to the clinical space. When actually I went to Seattle to finish my fellowship. So I did my PhD and my fellowship in bone marrow transplant at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research in Seattle for 12 years. I was in a tenure track. I had my lab there. I was in Seattle from, I think, 2004 up to 2014. So I had several grants. But obviously, it's very complicated to live out 100% out of grants. And when NIH started actually pushing the pay lines for these grants to a higher level, I was very worried what would be my life in the future if I had to keep writing grants every 3 or 4 years. And that was one of the things that actually pushed me out of it.
It's the publisher perish philosophy or exactly. Mantra. Yeah,
exactly. And actually, I have several patents that actually still in play, including for some molecules that are in the graft versus host disease and in ulcerative colitis that we license to other companies. I'm very proud because one of my molecules is actually in phase 3 right now is alpha-1 antitrypsin for acute GVHD. And this is one of the beautiful things about being the bench side. because you can actually make a bigger impact. Obviously, the recognition is lower than what it is when you are in academia, because some institutions actually they want you to be seeing more patients and dedicating yourself to less bench work. But I was very determined to actually push the bench work that I had started in Seattle. So when I was giving one of these talks about this molecule, actually this was around 2013, 2012, I got approached by the CMO of Gilead Therapeutics. So you know Gilead, big small molecule, HCV, HIV, and John McHutchinson, that some of you guys may know, actually came to me and said, Mario, I really want you to come to work with us at Gilead. We have several small molecules that can be positioned in the autoimmune space, in graft versus host disease, which is a complication of bone marrow transplant, right? And that's what actually was the start point for me. So I left Seattle around 2013, 14, and I joined Gilead here in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And I worked there for like 2 years doing small molecules and actually early stage assets. I met a lot of wonderful people. Alessandro Riva, we did the acquisition of Kite. I helped him doing the acquisition of Kite. We had a very nice team that were doing a due diligence across multiple CAR T cell companies. And this was from 2015 to 2017. So in 2017, I met a beautiful team. I saw some of the early biomarker data that Nektar Therapeutics was actually publishing. This was a combination of checkpoint inhibitors, more so nivolumab, in combination with this polymer conjugated IO2, which then was called BEMPEG, or Nektar 214. So this was also one of the things that was fascinating, because my PhD was in cytokines. So I helped to discover one of these cytokines that's called interleukin number 32. And Mary, our CFO, Dr. Mary Ferry, said, Mario, I really want you to come here with a new wave of cytokines. So we had the IO2, but we also had IO7, IO15, IO18. And I said, Mary, I would be delighted to do. I was reviewing the biomarker data already from you guys, because then Gilead was already thinking about acquisition of Nektar. And then Mary, myself, Jay-Z, and REC have been working together for 8 years this year. So I've been here for 8 years, and I'm very happy. Ups and downs, like everything in biotech. Oncology is obviously a harder area to do drug development than it is in autoimmune space. And there's multiple reasons for that. That if you're interested, we can go into details. But I think, knowing what we know about the data that we have, I think we are in the right track to bring something very disruptive for oncology. We can go into details about that as well. But anyway, so this is what drove me from academia to clinical development, and I don't regret, not even a bit.
Love to hear that. Good decisions lead to good places, and it seems like you're definitely at a great place and helming wonderful work at Nektar. And thank you so much for sharing that journey. And so, in terms of, as you mentioned, challenges around development of novel therapeutics and oncology, but also what's interesting is that Nektar is also in the autoimmune disorder space. And so can you comment really on Nektar's, you did touch on it a bit, but really its mission and its goals, and also its approach to treating autoimmune disorders and cancers. And I'd also like to know what indications Nektar is really focused on right now.
Yeah, so we have, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, we have this drug that's called RESPAG, which works like low-dose IO2. So this is the beautiful technology of polymer conjugation that Nektar has. We are able to get any target and actually modulate the exposure in a way that we don't have to be worried about sometimes multiple injections, multiple administrations. And we had until early last year, we had a very good partnership with Lilly, which we are developing this drug that's called Respect, which, as I mentioned, is based on interleukin number 2.
And it's an investigational drug at the moment, right?
Correct. It's an investigational drug. And this drug now, after we stopped that relationship, this drug now is in multiple indications. We are starting with a very large trial that we just put a press release a couple weeks ago, which is atopic dermatitis. We are very excited to announce that we complete this very large, close to 400 patients. And this trial is being to read around June, July this year. So it's going to be very interesting to see, low dose IL-2 has this mechanism of action that actually enhances T regulatory cells. And we know that T regulatory cells is the de facto establisher of immune tolerance. So, if you can enhance the Treg compartment, you can in turn actually suppress the inflammation that's so commonly observed in atopic dermatitis and other indications as well as alopecia areata. This is the second trial that we have, is the 35806 trial. So this is the patients that are losing hair. And obviously this is something very interesting. And let's see what this data is going to show us. And this is just to talk about the assets in the autoimmune space that we have right now. We also have 2 or 3 new pre-IND assets that we are very excited. We have a TNFR2. So this is one of those tumor necrosis factor receptors that seems to be upregulated or downregulated depending which cells are you looking. So this is also very interesting for the autoimmune space. There's multiple indications, gastrointestinal indications, even neurological indications that if you could modulate downstream signaling, this particular receptor actually would suppress inflammation. So this is very interesting to see moving to the clinic very soon. We believe that we might be able to file IND either in the end of this year or beginning of the next year.
Fantastic. And so what really differentiates Nektar's therapies, or really the company's approach from traditional treatments for autoimmune conditions and cancers versus others in the field, and really where does Nektar position itself in terms of really the novelty and innovation side?
I think one of the things that differentiates Nektar, first of all, is the culture of this company. We have a very interesting culture. It's a very collegial. We are not that large company that we used to have, right? 700 people working here. After all these shortcomings that we had in the past, we created a culture that actually we are working with friends and with people that actually do understand science and know how to maximize resources in a way that actually is very productive. The second thing about Nektar is the polymer conjugation technique. So we have this technology that's a well-established technology that we actually provide services to multiple commercial entities. So we had GCSF, for example, which is Prolasta, is one of the things that actually we actually give the technology to other companies, which is basically enhancing without having to do any mutation on a certain peptides or proteins. We can actually enhance the exposure. And having all these things aligned, right? The technology, the relationships with the field, I think it makes the Nektar well positioned to actually have very productive deliverables out there. So we are very excited about what 2025 is going to look like for Nektar.
And in terms of some of the conditions that you mentioned, atopic dermatitis, alopecia, and then also in oncology, some of the cancers that you're working on or developing therapies for. In terms of autoimmune disorders, I think more so, like, what do you think, or what do you see as underserved or in critical need of innovative therapies in these spaces? What are the unmet needs, so to say?
Yeah, so like for example, for atopic dermatitis, that one of these assets that are the most pleiotropically used, which is dupilumab, is a drug that had a lot of actual liabilities when it comes to safety profile, right? Some of these patients, they are already dealing with all the stigma of skin symptoms, so they don't want to be actually worried about some of the side effects that these drugs have. And what Nectar via RESPECT program is trying to accomplish is actually trying to reset the immune system and making something that your body already has, to suppress. So you're kind of fixing the problem and not cutting down the problem. Because when you use neutralizing antibodies such as Dupi, what you're doing is if you stop the drug, your disease will come back. So this is the biggest limitation of these drugs. And not even mentioning some of the ocular side effects, some of the other injection site reactions that some of these drugs do have. We believe that by actually giving a new wave of T regulatory cells, there is a potential for us to stop the treatment with some of these assets. So it's like it's fixing the problem. You know what I mean? It's not something that you just neutralizes one of the particular um, connections between cells, which, when you shut it down with Dupi, the production of granzyme and perforin and all these players and interferon gamma, basically, if you stop giving the drug, you're going to still producing these things that's going to do damage to the tissues. With RASPAG, which is low dose IO2, you're basically creating a new wave of T regulatory cells and has the potential to actually fix the problem. That's one of the expectations. And I think our trial, this very large phase 2 trial that we are doing with 400 patients, we're going to be able to address if we can stop giving the drug. So this is one of the beautiful things that we are doing in the clinic right now.
Wonderful. And so, what kinds of considerations go into designing clinical trials for autoimmune conditions, as well as oncology trials? And how does Nektar really ensure that, trial designs are patient-centric, as we hear about all of these themes in clinical trials these days? Patient centricity, and then ensuring patient diversity, and all of these factors, and even access to clinical trials. And so how does Nektar kind of keep those elements in mind? And what's the approach to designing clinical trials today in general? How is the landscape, and how is Nektar really addressing these elements?
Question. So Nektar is fully aware about minorities. One of the things that we actually are always very worried, Mary and myself, is that actually allowing access and making sure that everybody has equal access to this trial. So we have, for example, for our largest trial, the 358 05 trial, too many numbers. So in that trial, we are spread across multiple sites here in the United States and other countries in Europe, and to ensure that we have a very nice genetically sampling and allowing all sorts of background to actually be, for us to address this question, can we work across the board when it comes to minorities and different genetic pools? So this is one of the things we are working also with CROs that actually have done this trial before in a successful way. We are making sure that we are actually avoiding some big pitfalls in the autoimmune space, which is when you try to actually cut down costs. You're just enrolling in one country or one particular geographical reason that may or may not have issues with placebo effect. We know that some of there's actually indications such as atopic dermatitis. There is a humongous risk of you facing issues with placebo effect. And we are very cognizant of that. We did a lot of homework with this. We did analyze a lot of trials that were positive or were negative, not only about the MOA of the drug, but also the issue with the placebo effect. So we are fully aware what's happening in the past 2 months with Q32 Bio and other biotechs that actually had issues with very high placebo effect. So by doing so, actually, we are minimizing the risk, right? Minimizing the risk of despite of your drug, knowing that we work because we have done phase 1 and phase 1b trials with this drug, we already have what we believe is the optimal biological dose, but we just want to retest it. So in sites that actually we believe that know how to conduct the trial, right? So I think when you go to do clinical development, and if you don't have this understanding about what went wrong, and you cannot win, because you need to be able to take a look at the past in order to minimize these risks, right?
Yep, absolutely. A lot of important considerations with risk. And yeah, it's really great to hear that Nektar is really engaged and cognizant all of the aspects that are important today in clinical trials, and access and all of that. And in terms of challenges, I think you touched on this, or when we were before we went live and on air. But in terms of what are the current challenges in drug development today, in terms of developing novel therapies for complex diseases like autoimmune conditions and in the oncology space? And so, what are some of those challenges, and how is Nektar addressing them?
Yeah, so I think I already touched one of the biggest ones, right? So sometimes you have the most successful drugs, like you do what you believe that it's going to work like a charm, but then towards the end of your clinical development path, you face this issue of wrong site selection, right? We've seen this multiple times over and over and over again. So I think Nektar is very invested. Like, we have a very good team of operational people. We are working with the people who actually had approved Dupi, and we have so many things that we are doing to actually mitigate any risk of having a high placebo effect. Um, and knowing what when Lilly run these trials for us, because we have to understand the RASPAC was initially developed by Lilly. So, and we saw when we got the drug back from Lilly, we actually re-review all the data, and the signal was very clear that this drug did what's supposed to be doing, not in our hands, in a third part hand. So it's the best kind of scrutiny that a drug can get when it's being developed by a very large organization such as Lilly. And we're just wrapping up and making sure that what they saw there is actually true in this larger, in a multi-centric trial. So I think making sure that you're not bypassing any potential step in developing the drug is very important. I think another thing is that at the same time, we have to see what we're going to be doing next, right? To actually keep the pipeline robust in a way that is attractive, right, for potential. I don't know. Everybody's looking about exit strategy for companies nowadays, right? We have to keep the company very beef up, if you wish. So we have oncology, we have autoimmune diseases, we have pre-IND assets. So I think it's a beautiful package what Nektar has, and just I know we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to point it out that we are doing a lot of beautiful oncology work too. Like, we have our wholly owned IL-15 asset that's called Nektar 255. We just actually published a beautiful paper last year in collaboration with our Stanford colleagues, Crystal Mako and Laurie Muffley. So this is in a patient population in young adults that actually have acute lymphocytic leukemia, including with CNS disease, which is neurological symptoms. So this is a highly unmet medical need. Like, usually in clinical trials, big pharmas, they don't enroll these patients because it's very hard to treat. So what Nektar did next is we actually gave this IL-15 asset, that's a beautiful PK, beautiful PD, to Dr. Mako, and she combined that with CAR T cells. And what we've seen is that Nektar 255 can indeed enhance trafficking of CAR T cells in the CNS of the patients. And we just published this on Blood, which is the highest ranked journal in hematology and oncology. And we are so excited to see the data because it goes hand in hand with all the randomized data that we are doing here at Nektar as well. So I think this is having a balance between what is sexy for the investor community, which is autoimmune indications, with a little bit of actually unmet medical need in oncology. It's always a beautiful balance to see.
Right. And I think oncology is such a challenging space, of course. And there's so much, I mean, at the same time, there's so much work going on, but just the sheer complexity of that. Not to say that autoimmune conditions are any less complex, but definitely a lot to work with and a lot of learnings on the way, I'm sure, as well. And you did mention partnerships and collaborations in terms of the asset from Lilly and how they had conducted the trial. And so, are there any partnerships and collaborations that have, apart from that one, have significantly really advanced Nektar's work?
Yes, so we have a beautiful collaboration with EMD Serrano, Merck GA, with the oncology asset, with Nektar 255. So we have an ongoing trial that just complete enrollment called Javelin 100 medley study. This is in bladder in the maintenance setting where we are combining Bavencio with Nektar 255. So in that trial, EMD Serrano came to us actually asking for, they wanted to have access to a cytokine that would enhance NK cells and CD8s. Why do they do this? Because they look at when they did file the data with Bavencio in bladder, they saw the patient who had the highest infiltration of NK cells and CD8 cells were the ones that had the best PFS, progression-free survival. So basically, there was a positive correlation between amount of NK cells with survival. So the patient responded very well to the drug, to the checkpoint inhibitor. So they came to us plus two other companies. So it's a fourth arm trial, granting it because they wanted to have access to IL-15. So long story short, that trial just completed enrollment. It's 80 patients per arm. And we're going to know about the overall survival and the PFS very soon, I think, second quarter this year, around June, July again. So that trial is, we are very excited to be disclosing data. We also have this beautiful trial with a company that's called Abelzeuta. So this is a TIL trial. So we are combining Nektar 255 with their TIL product. Patients who progress after receiving frontline therapy. So basically, the patient will collect some tumors. They're going to make some TILs. And instead of giving IO2, which has a lot of issues, high dose IO2 has issues with safety. Some of these patients have to stay inpatient for 10 days. We're going to be giving IO15, which is the de facto cytokine that actually would create a memory phenotype in these products. Like we know that you need to be able to keep the cells, the tumor cells under control. And IO2 is not the perfect cytokines because they have issues with Tregs, they have issues with in solid tumor. There's a lot of influx of immunosuppressive subsets. And with IO15, it's different because you only expand NK cells and CD8 cells, which don't have any immunosuppressive effects. So we are very excited about that too. And just to wrap up, in solid tumors, we had a beautiful late breaker acceptance work that was done in collaboration with MD Anderson in November last year. So this was a trial where we gave Nektar 255 after completion of chemoradiation, for patients with non-small cell lung cancer. So we worked with Dr. Stephen Lin from MD Anderson. For the work was, we know that when we give radiation to patients, not only lung patients, but also patients with glioblastoma, patients with breast cancer, these patients suffer up for a year with very low lymphocyte counts. And we know that lymphocytes are the first wave of anti-tumor effect, right? So what we are trying to accomplish there is by giving Nektar 255, we are trying to bring these lymphocytes back. In this way, they can actually give more anti-tumor effect. And what Dr. Lin presented at SITC in November last year was our outpatients that received Nektar 255 after completion of chemoradiation by week 8 these patients, 100% of them actually were able to convert to normal levels of lymphocytes. This is remarkable because the control groups were none of the patients, more than 200 patients actually were able to convert to normal levels of lymphocyte by week 8. So this by itself is, you have the potential to be very disruptive for the paradigm of treating patients who are lymphopenic because of radiotherapy, because all sorts of other backbones, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
And it seems like IL-15 is really a central kind of player in all of this. And I think I actually studied cytokines as well in grad school. And yeah, you'd hear, and actually in hematology, oncology, and AML. And so, I was studying CSF1, colony stimulating factor 1, or
Which IL-15 can upregulate. So
there you go. Yeah, because I did remember seeing IL-15, but there was not much of a focus on that. We would talk about the IL-6s, the IL-2, the TNF alphas, but IL-15, yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking more into this. And
and to be clear, Nektar also has a CSF1 pegylated that's pre-IND right now. So we don't talk a lot about this, but we are actually very interested in CSF1. And yes, so you can work for us if you want.
there we go. I want to revisit after my thesis. So in terms of, I think, advances, you've talked about so many that Nektar is leading, and I think IL-15 is one of them, really, in oncology and then also in autoimmune diseases. So what do you see as sort of the advances, this quote-unquote trends in both of these fields in going forward, and how is Nektar positioned to drive some of them?
Yeah, so one of the things that Nektar, like we all are worried, right, is the concept of financial toxicity. That RASPAC has the potential to have a stop on this, right? So you're going to induct the patient, you're going to give a couple of cycles in the maintenance setting, but have the potential to be remittive. So this is something that actually nobody else has, right? The potential of having reestablishing of immunotolerance and actually having the patient achieving cure from some of these very large indications such as atopic dermatitis. So this by itself is a big accomplishment that Nektar has. Our trials, as much as we can, we try to actually put a stop when you want to give the drugs. Some of the other companies, they don't have this concern about giving drugs for multiple years and without even knowing if you have to stop or not stop the drug. So this is one of the things that we are very proud to be able to address. RASPAC program is addressing this thing about remittive therapy. So and we have so many goals this year, 2025. Every time that I think a little bit about what is going to look like May, June, July, August this year, it gives me like so much excitement how many news we're going to have this year. And it is a beautiful opportunity to be working in this environment and with people that are smart, that are collegial, and kudos to Nektar and to Howard and our leadership to actually being able to keep these people here and working under this atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. And so in terms of some of the milestones in the next coming months and couple of years, what can we kind of expect and keep our eye out
we
for?
have all this beautiful data from RASPAC coming. So as I said, we just put a press release that we complete the enrollment, 400 patients in a record time. So kudos. We all work very hard, the RASPAC team, to actually accomplish their deliverable. We're going to have announcement of the 255. We're in active process of actually finding a partner to help us develop 255. We have so many possibilities in cell therapy, in post-chemo radiation, in GU cancers, IL-15 just got, it's the second cytokine actually got a label on it. Like we had aldesleukin with IL-2 and now Immunity Bio just got a label for intravesical usage of a drug that's now is a super agonistic IL-15 that's called Anktiva. So this helps Nektar 255 and other cytokine companies actually to have some aspirational goals of actually being able to approve new waves of cytokines, not only IL-2, but also IL-15, IL-7. So this is very exciting for the field. 2025 is the year.
Is the year. Yeah, it seems so. So we'll definitely be watching out for the latest and greatest from Nektar this year at Xtalks. And just to end off, I wanted to ask you, what is the secret behind really leading something like Nektar, something very special, obviously, and something that is so fruitful, and I can just see your passion. And so what really drives you, and what makes a good leader? What makes you want to get up and do this every day? And what advice would you have for others that want to get into biotech and the ups, the downs, and everything that goes into it?
Well, first of all, we have a very nice group of people working together. We have our CMO, Dr. Mary Tagliaferri. I think she's one of the secret trade secrets that Nektar has. We have Jay-Z, we have Jennifer Rudock, we have Howard Robin. We have a lot of very good people that actually allow us the freedom to operate in the best possible way. All these people working together in conjunction, being a small, nimble company allow us to make decisions very quickly. Like I used to work at Gilead, and we had I don't want to badmouth Gilead. It's a beautiful company, but it was so complicated to make fast decisions, and that's why it's so attractive for people that are trying to develop new therapies, like being able to make decisions and redirect ourselves. I like to make a perfect analogy to this, which is like driving a powerboat versus a transatlantic. Well, when you're in a small company, you can just move and tilt a little bit, and it's enough to change the direction.
Right.
When you're driving
something massive, yeah.
It takes years to make a little shift in the route that you want to pursue. So it's so complicated, and I feel bad for some of my colleagues that actually are running very large operations, but obviously, what's best for your personality. So I think Nektar is well positioned. Hopefully, we're gonna have a very nice set of news coming out this year. So we are very excited about it. That should be the secret sauce for why it makes sense to go and wake up in the morning and be where you are.
And I think a large part of that secret sauce, is you, Dr. Marcondes, really just hearing, your passion, your drive for everything that you do at Nektar. And so they're very fortunate to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, we try the best.
Exactly. Try your best for the best. And I think really Nektar has some of the best, and we're so fortunate. I'm so fortunate that I was able to steal some of your time today and to speak to some of the best at Nektar. And Dr. Marcondes, once again, thank you so much for your time and sharing all of the wonderful work that you're helping to spearhead at Nektar.
My pleasure. Then enjoy this beautiful MLK holiday that we have here. And I'm very happy to talk with you guys this morning.
Likewise. All right, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.
To join the Xtalks community, visit xtalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.